This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Daily Leader. Brad McDonald here today with another solo episode, and really excited to get to do a little bit of review on some of the recent guests that we have had. Alex Seal, Michael Christensen, and Hudson Brock. So I've been reflecting on these episodes a lot and wanted to share what I believe are some of the big takeaways from those episodes. So welcome to another episode. I want to remind you guys to subscribe, like, share, comment as we close out season 1. We're super grateful for those of you who have followed along, and we want to continue to give you the opportunity to follow along with what we're doing. So make sure you subscribe so you get the Daily Leader right to your YouTube homepage or in your inbox, however you listen. And then lastly, I want to encourage you guys to consider joining our community. That's something that we've been building as we've thought about expanding what we're doing with the Daily Leader beyond just doing this work of podcasting, and would really love for you guys to join us with what we're doing on Circle. We're going to be offering some really cool group coaching stuff there too in the beginning of 2025. So go check that out. All right, so let's jump into Alex Seal. Alex is the founder of the Pivot Experience, which does coaching, content, consulting. He's also been a long-time multi-restaurant operating partner at a Chick-fil-A for a local Chick-fil-A franchisee. And so that culture and that context have had a big influence on him. One of the big takeaways from that conversation with Alex was, what does it mean to create a culture of excellence? And understanding why excellence matters in leadership. It may seem obvious to some of you, but it's not obvious to everyone why excellence is such a critical priority when leading and when really running an operation of any kind. So I want to kind of highlight a few things that I learned from Alex as we talked about the idea of excellence. First and foremost being personal responsibility. If you guys are familiar with Jocko Willink, you've seen Extreme Ownership. He obviously has a very intense brand, and he has a very intense way of saying everything. But the idea of extreme ownership basically comes down to personal responsibility, right? And Truett Cathy, who's the founder of Chick-fil-A, has obviously had a huge impact and influence on who Alex is. He said that Truett has this famous quote that he's known for in Chick-fil-A, and it's that perfection is the expectation, and we will tolerate excellence. And he also has a quote where he says, if it's to be, it's up to me, that kind of truism. And I think that personal responsibility is an important part of excellence because it is a personal decision. It's not something that you can really choose because someone else wants it for you, or you can understand because of someone else. It's really on a need to know basis, right? You have to need excellence in your life. You have to care about it from a place of personal motivation and personal desire, or it's not really going to manifest itself because it's difficult. It's costly. It requires sacrifice. Excellence means that there are certain things that you say no to in order to say yes to that which you're pursuing excellence in. So excellence requires personal responsibility. Something else that I think is really important that Alex highlighted was the idea of partnership. He used Starbucks actually as an illustration for this because the employees at Starbucks often refer to themselves as partners. And so partnership ultimately deals with not like something on a cap table with whether or not you have equity in a business, right? It deals with if whether or not you have a stake in something, a personal stake in something. right? An emotional, a mental, a psychological stake in it. Do you genuinely care about how something does? Does it thrive? Is its performance strong? Are you winning? Right? You cannot technically be an owner, but still function like a partner. And you can do this by asking yourself, how would the owner handle a situation? Or if this was mine, how would I handle a particular situation? You can see yourself as being a partner in the success of any endeavor. And excellence comes from that mentality, a mentality that says, I care about this. I actually care about how this thing functions and if whether or not we succeed. Another idea was competence, right? Competence deals with how we bring our unique value to a situation or a skill set. We can either do it with a high degree of competence or we can be mediocre. And while we can't be good at everything, or we certainly can't be great at everything, there are certain things that each of us have an aptitude for, and our personalities and our nurturing align us with. And so, if whether or not we possess the skills to deliver on a brand promise is really important. When we personally, as leaders, don't have the skills to deliver on a brand promise, what do? We hire, we delegate, we train and develop. We find people that have the raw talent or the nurtured aptitude in order to be successful in a particular skill set. And we give them the opportunity to be the subject matter expert or to be the star player in that lane. We have to ask ourselves, what does true care look like in this situation? And we have to recognize that competence is more than just having good intentions, but it's about executing according to a standard. And so far we've talked about personal responsibility. We've talked about the idea of partnership and asking yourself, how would the owner handle something? We've talked about competence, and that excellence means that we have to execute at the highest level. But lastly, I would say one of the things that Alex highlighted as it relates to excellence and creating a culture of excellence was the idea of influence. And I've said this oftentimes, but the environment he's coming from in Chick-fil-A is a really great example of not just a chicken company, right? Not just a people company, but a leadership development company. And the reason that Chick-fil-A is ultimately as successful as they are isn't because they have great products, although they do. It's not just their service model, although they have a strong service model, especially for QSR. It's not just that they hire great talent and invest a lot of money in developing them, but it's that they have a leadership development mindset, which means that they're constantly trying to give people more influence over situations and more authority to control decisions. And they're trying to push that down deep into the organization. And you see this pervasively across all of the Chick-fil-A's that I've ever worked in, worked for, consulted into, as well as am just aware of relationally because I got a lot of friends who are in the business. So excellence doesn't just stay with you, right? When you care about excellence and you put out the influence of excellence into your relationships, you actually demonstrate, teach, and train people who you lead on what a brand promise is or what a standard is, what a commitment is, and what it means to have integrity as you pursue that commitment. And so excellence ends up being a factor of your influence and ends up being something that people catch, not just at their top, although they are, but you can actually help drive people's desire and appetite for excellence by showing them how good something can be. And Alex used some sports analogies and illustrations to get at that. And I think there's lots of elite programs across the country, whether that's in college athletics or professional athletics. And you can see there's a big difference between the players who are performing at the highest level of excellence and the cohorts that are just underneath them. It's not always just a fine line. Sometimes the highest performers perform leaps and bounds beyond what their second and third layer cohort competes at. And so I loved what Alex taught us as it related to excellence and the culture of excellence. I want to encourage you guys to go back and listen to that episode if you want to start introducing your team to deeper levels of excellence, because he gives us a masterclass on how to do that from his time leading with a multi-unit Chick-fil-A franchisee. Another episode that I loved that I don't think we've spent enough time highlighting in season 1 is our conversation with Hudson Brack, who's the founder of Aloe Hire and The Arena. And I felt that Hudson was this incredible example of what it means to lead with entrepreneurship and to lead with like entrepreneurial courage, leaving a full-time job, leaving a comfort zone opportunity, and really kind of going like all in on what he had a sense of calling and vision for. And what he named his co-work space, he has both a recruiting company named Aloe Hire, and then he has a co-work space named The Arena, which is kind of a new budding opportunity that's still developing. And he's still kind of trying to find product market fit. But the idea of The Arena came from the quote from the man in The Arena, where it's like, it's not the critic who counts, blah, 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 blah. Go Google that. It's super awesome. I have a picture in my office at home. But basically what it comes down to is this: what do you use to evaluate your performance? Do you leverage other people's perspective? Do you leverage a scoreboard that's nebulous and not very well identified? I would suggest, and I think that Brock, if he were with me right now, would agree, that the first thing that we measure as it relates to our performance is not what someone else says. It isn't even necessarily what the scoreboard says, because performance happens on a continuum. Go back to our episode with Josiah Ugono. He's the founder of All Things Performance. He wrote a book. He says that performance happens on a continuum, right? That our effort does not necessarily mean we're going to have a winning outcome. And so when we recognize that, we can have healthy perfectionism. We can have healthy high performance, because we recognize that we cannot control the outcome of every game, right? So we're not looking always at the scoreboard. We're not looking always at what other people are saying. We're looking first primarily at, did I perform at my highest ability relative to the circumstances that I found myself in, relative to my competitors, relative to the situation? And when we do that, that sets us in the proper context to then measure the results, right? Then we go to the scoreboard. Then we look at the game footage. Then we start to look at what others are saying about the performance, what they see, what they didn't see. And we have to ask who we care more about pleasing, right? Do we care more about pleasing the critics, right? The people who are watching, or do we care more about pleasing our own best effort in any given situation? And then I would say another question is this: how do we respond when we lose or fail? Because loss and failure should be oriented towards learning, not just oriented towards winning, right? Not just oriented towards success or achievement. What we want to understand is that when we lose or fail, we have an opportunity to learn what works, what doesn't work. We're putting data points up on our board for future learning and growth. And that in and of itself is a form of a win. So I'm not suggesting that like we should all get a trophy, or that we should call every loss a win, that we shouldn't be honest with ourselves about where our performance was weak, or where perhaps like we didn't practice or train enough or recover well. No, to the contrary, I'm suggesting that we should have integrity, and that we should recognize that when we've done our best, that's the first and most important thing to recognize. And then after that, we look at the broader context, the situation, the points on the board, etc. So Hudson ends up being this incredible example of doing just that, like really, really going for it, putting forth a courageous and as well as confident effort in entrepreneurialism. And also, I'd like to add one other note here that really stuck out to me, which is community. he's recognizing that the arena is not just about my own performance, but it's also about the other men and women in the arena with me, right? It's about what we're doing together, in that we can perform as a group and not just as individuals. We can be ambitious in trying to achieve certain things in our work as leaders, but we don't have to do that alone. And I think oftentimes that's probably a rookie mistake, especially emerging leaders make. They think that, I have to do this on my own, whatever that may be. And they don't leverage relationships in a way that's healthy and smart and ultimately much more sustainable. And so Brock's a great example of someone who is trying to build community around his work in order that everyone engaged would flourish and would achieve more together. So check out Hudson Brock's interview with us on, I like the YouTube version. I thought that was a lot of fun getting to record that with him. And also check out Owl Hire, where he's grinding away in Chattanooga. Okay, lastly, and I'll make this one quick, Michael Christensen. So this was a really fun episode from a close friend of Taylor's who does a lot of working out with, but Michael's also a part of like this multinational global IT firm. And one of the things that we really took away from that episode was this idea that leadership style matters, right? And oftentimes when we're leaders and we have control over making decisions and causing things to happen, we kind of just make everyone deal with our way of doing things. But what we know is that because of personality, because of preferences, because of aptitudes, styles, and then the other thing we layer into this is cultures, different forms or styles of leadership can be much more or much less effective depending on how they're used. Particularly when we're dealing with people who have a different way or a different logic for thinking about how to solve problems. He used an example of France. We talked about Japan. We talked about the United States. And we talked about how what one culture might interpret as being a great way to solve a problem, another culture might interpret as being a terrible way to solve a problem. And so for leaders who are leading distance teams, remote teams, teams that speak different languages, come from different cultural backgrounds, recognizing that the more that we can foster collaboration, the more that we can literally spend time together talking, not just about what we think, but how we should go about solving problems. And we can leverage a variety of personality types and styles for leading. We're going to be that much more effective. And so one key question he gave us was to just simply ask yourself as a leader, how do my employees want to be coached and developed? How do my employees want to be coached and developed? And when we have clarity on how employees want to be coached and developed, when we actually have a conversation, we put in the time and the effort to have a conversation with them and to give them the opportunity to answer that question, we create a much higher likelihood for success. It reminded me of one of the things that we talked about on our very first episode, where it was just Taylor and I kind of introducing you guys to the idea of leadership paradoxes and to some of the paradigms that we would be talking about throughout this season. And we looked at situational leadership. And I introduced you guys to the situational leadership tool, which is essentially 4 parts, right? Directing. I do, you watch. Okay, so again, we're talking about styles of leadership, right? I do, you watch, style 1. Style 2, the leader takes on a more coach or coach-like approach. I do, but you help, right? So we're in it together and the follower or the employee is helping as the leader is coaching them through the process. Support. This is a style where the leader actually changes hands with the employee or the follower and says, hey, you're going to do this and I'm going to help you. So you've got your hands on the wheel and now I'm coaching from the side. I'm coaching not as a player, but as a guide. And then finally, delegate, right? Which is exactly what you think it is. It's the leader really removing themselves from the operations or the administration of a situation and saying, hey, you do it. I'm going to cheer you on. And so right here are 4 styles that you as a leader can apply on any given team and you can test, right? You can test it verbally in conversation and you can test it in your behaviors without using any words at all if that's the better approach. But again, what we're asking is, what does a specific person or team need in this concrete situation in order to be successful? And then adjusting a leadership style based on that. So those are some thoughts. I want to encourage you guys to go back, listen to episode with Michael Christensen, listen to the episode with Hudson Brock, listen to the episode with Alex Seal. Enjoy those, roughly hour-long conversations where we really get in deep on their leadership perspectives and philosophies. There's so much more that we could share, but I want to leave this for you guys for now. Season 1 has been so much fun. We're kind of coming to a conclusion here in the next couple episodes. And I just want to encourage you guys, if the Daily Leader has been meaningful to you this year, if it's been something that's had an impact on your leadership, consider joining the community. Consider jumping in and participating with us day in and day out as we go into 2025. And we really seek to improve a few things. First and foremost, our curiosity, right? What does it mean to lead? What does it mean to be the leader that only you can be in the unique situation that you find yourself in? Secondly, community. Don't lead alone. All right. Hudson Brock was a great example of what this looks like. Don't think that because you're a leader, it means you need to be unsustainable and unhealthy and isolated. No, there's plenty of people who find themselves in leadership roles and who want to walk with other people. And we're trying to build an environment there. Competence, right? So much was said about this on the Alex Seal episode when we were talking about excellence, right? Excellence does not happen on accident. You have to learn, you have to develop, you have to train. And so we're creating an opportunity for people to get very good at the skills of leadership. And we're breaking down what those are. First and foremost, I would say, is vision and prospecting. And so we have a whole course that's built on future, right? Future self, future company, future team, future. And then lastly, clarity, right? Because a nebulous vision is just as bad as no vision at all, right? What we're looking for is vivid. What we're looking for is clear. What we're looking for is something that burns so hot and so inspiring that I can't help but be in the pursuit of it. And so would invite you guys to join our community. And then lastly, like, subscribe, and share these episodes as they're helpful. We love you guys. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode as we get closer to wrapping up season 1.